Well, hello class. In this particular section, we are going to be talking about perception. And perception is very important when looking at and analyzing organizational cultures. In this particular chapter, we want to look at the role of perception of shaping people's beliefs and behavior. And we want to explain what factors influence individual perception, because everyone perceives things differently based on their own values and their own judgments. We're going to be looking now, getting to the topic of judgments. We want to describe some of the common biases and problems that we have with perceptions. Sometimes they can be misconstrued or miscommunicated and can cause some mild to serious conflict down the road. We're going to be looking at attribution. And we're going to look at the process of critical reflection, and that means how we looking at things. Are we looking at things in many different ways? Are we just myopic based on our own judgment of things? So, of course, when you do that, that causes what we refer to as perceptual errors. And then we'll apply the concepts of perception to organizations. Now, your book talks about, I want to bring you to specifically figure 4-1 on page 118 of your book, right under where it says Introduction to Perception, like what is perception? And what we look at is, number one, how do we shape perceptions? And then how do we analyze biases? What causes biases? And of course, the key thing is to figure out how to overcome biases. So you need to know what causes them and then how to overcome them. So I want you to pay particular attention to that figure 4-1 and read about what perception really is. How do we shape it? And you remember the last class we talked about how we actually think. We talked about learning organizations. And how we think has a lot to do with how we perceive things. And we think in terms of concepts, but a lot of perception, remember what comes first is emotions. And a lot of perception are based on perceptions are based on emotions. So you want to go into the process of perception, which is in page 119 in your book. And I think you want to pay special attention to what selective perception is. And if we understand selective perception, we're going to be looking at what are our limitations to our thinking. Why are we more myopic than we are extroverted in our way of looking at things? So this will help us to analyze some of the common biases that are out there. And you can't overcome the biases until you learn what causes them. Then I want you to go to page 121, figure 4-2, And we're going to start getting into attribution, outlining what attribution is. And if you go through the different levels of attribution, we have organizational attribution, we have intergroup attribution, interpersonal, and interpersonal. So it's really important that you take a good look at that pyramid and figure out what attribution is. Then go into such thing as halo effect and then Horn's effect as well. So the Pygmalion effect, read about that. The self-fulfilling prophecy. What we expect is what actually happens. Because what attribution does, and we see a lot of this in politics too, is it describes how blame or credit is attributed to someone or something for an event, for something that was said, for something that was done. So I want you to pay special attention to that. And then on page 122 of your book, figure 4-3, we're looking at factors that cause internal and external attribution. Read about internal attribution, what it is, and then read about external attribution. Okay? Those are important things to understand. And then go into table 4-1 and go through the different stages of what we call critical reflection. And when we talk about critical reflection, we're looking at ourselves personally, and we're looking at all of the different stages of what goes on, okay, when we start creating assumptions or beliefs in different things. And how does that match up to our personal feelings about things? How does that match up to what challenges our values? Okay? So read again about the different stages of critical reflection. And then finally, on table 4-1, I want you to look at that table, which is continued on 4-1 on page 123. So these are some of the different questions to ask yourself. When you talk about different types of biases and what causes them. So you've got to go back and figure out where the problem began, how you internalized it, how you perceived it externally from your internal feelings, okay? And what can you do differently in the future to prevent biases? So when you go to page 125, we start getting into OB at work and the case studies. So that's basically what this chapter is about. Go into it, and I will put some videos in there for you to take a look at as well. And we'll be going over that on Monday in the first, actually Tuesday, because we're on a Monday schedule, Tuesday. So I'll be going over that in the first half of the class. Second half of the class, we'll do our case studies. And we're getting very close to the Apple presentation, which will be the following Monday. And we'll talk a little bit about that too, and then we'll see where you are on your projects. Okay, so that's my video for this week.